All right, guys, John here. In today's video, we're going to compare these 4 ENGL lunchbox amplifiers. I'm super excited. This is something that I've been wanting to do for quite a while. So yeah, join me and let's have some fun. So the amps that we're going to compare today are the Fireball 25, which I was playing in the intro riff, the Ironball Special Edition, the Steve Morse Signature 20, and the new Ravager IR. Obviously, they're all small, they're all low wattage, right? So this is a 25 watt amplifier with 2 6L6 tubes in the power section, which is why a lot of people prefer this over the others because it has a bit more oomph and headroom. This is a 20 watt amp with 2 EL84s in the power section, and the same goes for the other two. So that's a pretty significant difference. This one is also a little bit bigger. These two, so the Ironball Special Edition and the Steve Morse, have a bunch of effects like delay, reverb, and stuff like that. So they're quite powerful. The Ravager IR is a bit more affordable and a bit more simple, so it doesn't have a noise gate. But they do all have a power soak, so you can connect them directly to your interface or your computer or whatnot, or your mixer, without needing to have a cabinet connected. So they have a built-in load, which is nice. But today's video is primarily going to be about the sound differences because they all sound pretty different. And in terms of the signal chain, I'm holding my ESP LTD RZK-III with the Fishman Fluence RZK pickups. I'm on the bridge pickup. Right now I'm on the active voicing. From there on, I'm going into the KHE Audio Electronics 4x12 cab amp selector, which is very awesome. I recently reviewed that on the channel. I'm using that to switch between the amplifiers, okay? Then I have the amplifiers in the loops, and then it's going into my Grossmann Fatbox 1x12 ISO cab, in which I've loaded up my Celestion Vintage 30, mic'd up with 3 mics, 2 SM57s, and 1 MD421 Kompakt, and that's it. I have some sweet tones dialed in right now, but what I'd like to do is set all the EQ controls to the middle for this video, see how they compare, and then show you how I would dial them in, and then see how we can perhaps make them sound a little bit closer. So let's do that right now. Let's start with the Fireball. I'll leave the master volume settings and the presence settings as I have them now, but now bass, middle, and treble are set to noon. Lead gain is set to around 3 o'clock for some nice high gain chugs. This is the Fireball with all the EQ controls set to the middle. Not bad sounding, but a little bit on the dark side. So I definitely like to tweak the EQ there to get a more bright and open and articulate tone. We'll do that in a minute. First, let's try the Ironball SE with all the EQ controls in the middle as well. Let's switch to number 1, which is the Ironball SE. Let's check it out. Gain is cranked up all the way, by the way. So immediately, you will notice that this is more articulate and tight sounding and a bit more crunchy than the Fireball 25, right? So let's compare the two with some simple chugs. So this is the Ironball SE and the Fireball. And back to the Ironball. It has a bit of a different response, right? I think it's also a little bit more loud, so let me tame it a little bit. All right, so that is the Ironball SE. Also a little bit on the dark side, right? Because we haven't tweaked the EQ just yet. Now let's try the Steve Morse Signature 20, which is going to sound very different. Once again, EQ in the middle, gain set to 3 o'clock. Take a listen. As you'll notice, this is quite a bit darker sounding, right? It's more of a lead amplifier, but it needs some tweaking to open it up. Note that for this amplifier, there's no presence control on the lead channel, just on the clean channel, whereas on the Ironball, the lead channel has a presence control and the clean channel doesn't have a presence control. So that's an interesting choice. Okay, now before we tweak everything, let's also try the Ravager IR. Let me put everything to the middle position. And gain is also set to 3 o'clock. Let's take a listen. So that's number 3. Now, as this amplifier doesn't have a noise gate, it's a bit more noisy, but that mainly comes from the pickups, because Fishman pickups tend to be a little bit on the noisy side. Take a listen. So if I switch to the Ironball, for example, which does have a noise gate, let me turn on the volume. It's quiet, right? Switching back to the Ravager. So the noise floor is higher because it does not have a noise gate. All the others do, and the noise gates are turned on. That's why those are a bit more quiet. So they sound pretty different. Let me match up the levels quickly for you guys. So I've matched up the levels a little bit between the amplifiers so that they're kind of equally as loud, which is a little bit more difficult when you're doing things on the fly like this, but bear with me, okay? Let's start with the Fireball 25 and let's dial it in for a tone that I usually like to get with these amplifiers. I love the Fireball a lot. One thing that I like to do on the Fireball and most ENGL amplifiers is crank the treble quite a bit to open up the amplifier. So let's try that and see what we get, okay? That already helps quite a bit. Let's open it up a little bit more and also add a little bit of mid-range, which is also something that I like to do. Yeah, I like how it sounds. I must say that these pickups are quite hot. Maybe let me lower the gain a little bit. Plenty of saturation still, but I don't want too much, right? But I like a good high gain tone, so I think that sounds really good. As I mentioned, the presence control has been preset by me. It's now pretty low. It's at around 9 o'clock or so. You can get some really bright tones with the presence control. Take a listen as I dial in that control. That's all the way off. That's at noon. That's pretty bright, right? Let's turn it up to 3 o'clock. So that's way too bright. So I have it down pretty low. Let's say 9 o'clock, right? That's a sweet spot-ish for me. All right, so that is the Fireball 25. Magnificent sounding lunchbox amplifier. For people who want the full ENGL experience but in a smaller package, I definitely very often recommend the Fireball 25. All right, now let's switch to the Ironball SE and let's dial that in a little bit. Again, gain is maxed, EQs are all set to noon, and presence right now is set to 2:30-ish, 3 o'clock-ish, which is cranked up quite a bit more than the Fireball. So it does have less presence on tap than the Fireball. Let's switch from the Fireball to the Ironball. So yeah, it's more tight and articulate, but dark, right? So let's open it up by adding some treble. Let's lower the gain a little bit. All right, let's switch back to the Fireball and compare. Yeah, so I think right now there's a room for a little bit more brightness on the Fireball. So let's add a little bit of presence. Just a smidge, and back to the Ironball. sounds great. They both sound really nice. A bit more mid-focus, tight and articulate, and a bit more big and fat sounding. All right, let's compare the two once more. Let me raise the bass a little bit on the Ironball, lower the mids a little bit, subtract a little bit of gain as well, and compare once again. And back to the Fireball. So if I go back to the Ironball and subtract a little bit more gain, add a little bit more bass, scoop the mids even more, yeah, tweak the treble a little bit. And the Fireball. Could add a little bit more treble on the Fireball and a little bit more presence. And the Ironball. Very slight volume difference there. Let's raise the volume a little bit. Fireball. Yeah, they both sound great. It's just a matter of taste, really, and also, you know, a matter of features. If you want reverb and delay and all that stuff, and a master volume boost and a gain boost, you know, you can't beat the Ironball because the Fireball does not have those features. Now, let's go ahead and compare the Ironball to the Steve Morse Signature 20. And yeah, as you heard, it's very dark sounding by default. So I'm going to have to crank up the treble quite a bit to make it sound brighter, but it will never sound the same as the other amps because of that. It's much more of a lead amplifier, right? Let's switch from the Ironball to the Steve Morse, and then let me add some treble. So this is the Ironball, and then the Steve Morse. That's so dark, right? So let's add some treble. So it's adding a lot more mid-range, basically, upper mids and stuff, but it's not really adding that upper sizzly presence area of the treble region that you'd maybe want for a rhythm tone, right? Let's go back and forth and let me tweak the treble a little bit. That's maxed. Sounds a bit too trebly for me. And back to the Ironball. Really different experience, right? Really different. Now let's go to the Ravager. And you know what? Let's start by taking the Ironball as a reference and then switching to the Ravager IR, the smallest, the newest edition, the most affordable one, the most stripped down one. Again, no presence control. So let's see what we can get. Starting again with the Ironball. And to the Ravager. So it's throaty sounding, more mid-focus. So I need to tweak it to make it sound more big and open. So let's do that. Let's add treble, lower the mids, and add some bass as well. That's a better sound tonally already. Let's go back and forth between this and the Ironball. So yeah, Ironball definitely is wider sounding, more sizzle up top and a bigger bottom end. So the Ravager sounds a bit more compact, which can work really well in a mix. So let's dial it in a little bit further to see if we can make it sound a little bit bigger. Turning up the bass all the way. And let's also raise the treble. And back to the Ironball. And back to the Ravager. I definitely think that the Ironball Special Edition has more of a big amp sound. Even though I like them both, it's a bit more compact, you know. Perhaps better for leads. Let's add a little bit of mids in there. Yeah, so if you're more of a rock/lead player, I think the Ravager is a great amp. For the metal chugga chugga, definitely the Ironball or the Fireball, so far anyway. Let's do a quick rhythm comparison between all the amplifiers. Starting again with the Fireball 25. Ironball SE. Steve Morse Signature 20. And the Ravager IR. Cool. So for rhythm, they all sound good, but the Fireball 25 is very hard to beat in terms of the bigness and the fatness. For the tightness and the sizzle, the Ironball definitely sounds really good as well. This is obviously quite dark, so for heavy rhythms, it's just not the best amplifier to pick. But for warm and thick leads, it's a good amplifier. Very satisfying for sure. And the Ravager is somewhere in between. It's a good rock amp, not the best metal amp in that it doesn't have the biggest chunks in the low end, if you know what I mean. Now let's do one more quick lead comparison between the amps, starting again with the Fireball 25, and let's enable the mid boost for that. I've lowered the volume a little bit. That's the Fireball. Let's switch over to the Ironball. There is the gain boost function. Let's see how that sounds. Does change the voicing of the amp quite a bit. Now the Steve Morse, first with the gain boost off. Now with the gain boost on. Yeah, it's a bit more noisy. It adds more gain. It doesn't change the voicing of the amplifier as much as the Ironball. Finally, the Ravager IR once more for a lead tone. Let me bump up the mids a little bit. So that's the distorted tones. I don't know if you guys want to see this, but let's also do a very quick clean tone comparison. Starting with the Fireball, let's see what that does. Let's switch to the neck pickup and switch over to the clean channel. I've lowered the gain a little bit to compensate for the level differences. That's a nice sparkly clean. Let's also get a clean tone on the Ironball. Let's switch the channels. Back to the Fireball. The Ironball definitely is very chimey, quite lovely sounding. Of course, you can change that by tweaking the EQ, etc. But I really like the clean sound on the Ironball. Now let's go to the Steve Morse and also switch over to the clean channel. Let's add some clean presence. Lower the treble a touch. Back to the Ironball. Definitely more bright sounding. Back to the Steve Morse. Let's add some presence and lower the gain a little bit. Lower the mids as well. Back to the Ironball. And back to the Steve Morse. Yeah, so more mid-focused, a bit more honky, if you will. And then finally, the Ravager IR. Let's switch the channels and see what we get. Lower the gain a little bit. Nice clean tone. Back to the Ironball. Back to the Ravager IR. Let's lower the mids a touch. And let's do one more round with each amp, one chord, starting with the Fireball 25. Ironball SE. Steve Morse. Ravager IR. So yeah, that is that. Keep in mind that with each of these amplifiers, you can get some grit out of the clean channel if you crank the gain for a nice sort of vintage, low gain, crunchy tone. They're all quite versatile, right? If you want a lunchbox amplifier that has the tonal experience that is the closest to a big amp, my preference would be the Fireball 25. It has a nice clean channel. It has the mid boost. It's a bit more stripped down than the Ironball SE, but it's a great amp with 6L6s in the power section. They also make them with KD77s in the power section. Either way, great amp. For a similar experience, but with a more articulate and tight tone, a little bit less headroom, the Ironball SE is great. You've got reverb, you've got delay, master volume boost functions, MIDI control and stuff. It's a great package, really great. So I can also highly recommend this, at least for metal and modern styles, because it has the sizzle, even though the response is more tight in the bottom end, right? For the lead player who doesn't really care about modern rhythms and stuff, the Steve Morse is the one to get, you know, for having a lead tone that cuts through the mix very nicely. It's warm sounding, has all the same features as the Ironball SE. Presence aside, this one has the presence on the clean channel. This one has the presence on the lead channel. So that's something to take note of. But it has the MIDI control, etc., etc. Very different than the others, right? And then the more affordable package, which is a great rock amp. Perhaps not the very best metal amplifier because it's a little bit more compact sounding than the others. It's a fun little amplifier. I like it a lot. In comparison to at least the Fireball 25 and the Ironball, it does not have that low-end chunk and oof that you might want from an ENGL amplifier. So keep that in mind. But they're all great in their own way. So I really enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Which one was the greatest for you? Which one would you get? I'd love to know. Please also hit the like and subscribe buttons, as that really helps the channel out. I'd really appreciate it. And if you want to get something from ENGL, please use my affiliate link for Tolmon or Sweetwater, as that really helps the channel out. I'd really appreciate it. And be sure to also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers.